Hello everyone, welcome to a brand new video that I'm very excited to share, which is my 1cc no slowdown clear of Aleste 3, the new M2 shot triggers game. I have to remember to not say port because this is a brand new original title developed in the year 2020, at least according to the copyright screen. So in this video, I'll not only be doing my commentary of the scoring system and the survival and the gameplay systems of this game, but I'm also going to just give my impressions on how I think it stacks up to other M2 shot triggers releases and the other ports included on this collection. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is kind of explain what no slowdown is, because that might be a little bit confusing to people. So in the system settings of this game, you can go in, it's in Japanese, so it's kind of hard to find, but it's the first one in system settings. It's the only one that's in white rather than yellow. You can disable slowdown by turning that on. What that does is that it lets the game run at full, I'm assuming 60 FPS the entire time without any hardware-induced emulation. The thing about this is this is a Game Gear game. I believe you can actually buy it on the Game Gear. I'm sure it's expensive, but if you want to do that, you can. And so the Game Gear isn't exactly a powerhouse of shmupping action, right? I think the hardware is just very limited in what it can output as far as solid 60 FPS gameplay. I mean, for a handheld, I'm sure it's really good of the time, but these days, you know, it's pretty weak hardware. And the thing about this game is, even playing on the PS4, you can tell, wow, this is a whole lot of shmup for a little handheld like that to handle. And so when you're playing it with slowdown enabled, which is the default, the game is honestly a little bit slower paced and less fun in my opinion. So I would encourage you to play it with slowdown off. It is more challenging, but I think more fun in the end. Right now, I don't think there is a division on whether or not you're playing a slowdown or no slowdown run on the leaderboards, which I think is unfortunate. I think those should be divided because, like I said, the difficulty ramps up significantly once you play with no slowdown, especially the last stages. But, you know, it is what it is. Hopefully you mark in your title whether you're playing with slowdown or not if you upload a video. So anyway, the first thing I want to talk about with this release, which is something I've seen come up with other M2 shot trigger reports, so it's not just this one, is how important the gadget system is. So the gadgets are the information that you're seeing on the left and the right sides of the screen. Normally in my replays, you probably don't see too many gadgets going on because I usually played Tate or played rotated vertically. But since this is a Game Gear game, you know, there is no vertical rotation. It's meant to be played Yoko, so I'm taking full advantage of the gadgets. So what's really useful about these gadgets is not only do they provide you with information that's really helpful on the fly, like how high is your power-up level, how many power-up red orbs do you need to collect to increase your power-up level, how many red orbs do you need to collect to get your next shield. Those types of things are very useful while you're playing. And in other releases like the Rankograph in Battle Garega is insanely useful, or even the boss health in Battle Garega is also insanely useful. But what's also great about this gadget system that really helped me a lot yesterday, if you're seeing me stream this live, shout outs to people who tuned in for that, is that not only do the gadgets give you on-the-fly information like I said, but they also help teach you about the game. So as you can see, or I guess I didn't show it, but when you launch the game, it gives you a little how to play, which is useful if you read or speak Japanese. I am a hopeless gaijin that can barely pronounce shmup titles to begin with, so I have no idea what that's saying or how to play the game from that manual, right? So my best way to learn the game was actually to pay attention to the information the gadgets were giving me, and that's what I ended up doing. And I think I got a pretty good handle of how the systems work. And you can just watch this commentary video and I can break that down for you, but these gadgets were really valuable for allowing me to do that. So now let's break down a little bit of how this game works on a basic level, just to save people the time of trying to figure it out. So this game does not have a bombing system. There are no bombs. The controls are simply one-button controls. You got your 8-way movement, of course. A good shmup must have 8-way movement in my opinion. And then you have your just shot button, right? And it doesn't matter whether you turbo it or not. I tried it with turbo, without turbo. You don't need to do that. So the controls are incredibly simple and effective. The thing about having no bombs, though, is that you need to be very careful with your routing and your power-up levels, especially in the later stages, because you get no get-out-of-jail-free card. It makes sense why, because this falls in line with other games in the series, like Musha, Space Megaforce, all those types of things. Those don't necessarily have bombs. The Aleste 2, though, on the Game Gear, the game preceding this, does, which is pretty interesting. So you could say this is more faithful to something like Musha. And if you're familiar with Musha, this game will be right up your alley. And I love Musha. I had a lot of fun playing that. So I'm very excited with how this game turned out, though there are some differences. So the first thing I want to cover for everyone is the weapon system and how that works. So as you see here, I'm using the Rising Laser, as it's called. You can see on the gadget there the names for them. I was really struggling while I was playing because I kept giving them incorrect names that were way off. Like I kept calling the Rising Laser the Rocket, just because when I see R in a shmup, my brain says Rocket, but it is not remotely a rocket. So basically, in my opinion, some of these weapons are better than others, and one aspect of the gameplay is actually knowing how to manage your weapons and when to use them when, and also sometimes you have to dodge power-ups in order to maintain the weapons that you have. So the Rising Laser is a very, very powerful weapon. It's got a ton of great properties. The first is that it cancels certain amounts of bullets while it goes off, so you can actually kind of shield yourself a little bit with it. It also does a crazy amount of damage, as you can see here. Another cool thing about it is that it's pretty wide, so it gives you a pretty nice area of coverage. Overall, it's a very, very useful utilitarian weapon, one of my favorites. So that's the first weapon you'll see me using a lot. The next weapon that I use quite a bit is the homing. I think it's called Chaser or something like that. We'll see when I pick it up. That one is also very good. I think they kind of nerfed it a little bit intentionally to where sometimes the bullets will act a little bit erratically, or they'll take their time to get to the targets. So if you need to take enemies out fast, it's not very useful at that. But if you need to give yourself more space to move around the screen, the homing is very good. The defense shield has essentially one useful purpose I've found so far, which is in the final stage, so I guess shout out for that. The T, I'm not sure what the T stands for there, but it's like this weird spread shot that cancels some bullets but has limited range. It's okay. I don't think it's all that great, but you know, it's okay from time to time. A is, I don't know, aim attack or something like that. I never pick it up if I can avoid it. I think it's pretty awful. So my tier list for the weapons are number 1, the beam. Number 2, chaser or homing. Number 3, flame, as you see with F. And flame might be up there too. Flame does seem to be really good because not only does it have a good area of coverage, but it also will devour a lot of bullet types that other weapons won't use. So I think flame is good. The problem with it though is there's a kind of bit of a delay on when it activates, so you have to really get a handle of how to use it. It's a little less user-friendly, but I think if you got the hang of it, it's also a very powerful weapon. It'll be interesting to see as more people score this game and hone it in what weapons turn out to be better, because you never know. And then after that is defense shield, which is basically useless except for one section of the game. And then at the last, aim. I think aim is awful. Maybe it secretly is OP and I don't understand how it works, but it just doesn't. I understand how to aim it and stuff, but it just doesn't seem very strong, and it's kind of slow, and it's not all that wide either. I just don't really see good uses for it. And here we go. So chain chaser is the name of the C weapon, the homing weapon. And here's D. So here's the defense shield. It can be useful in some sections, but overall it's a little less consistent than basically the thing I don't like about defense is that it's a little bit too open where stuff can get inside it, but the way it wants you to use it is to basically fly into things, but stuff can get through it a little bit too much. Here's the firewall. This thing is pretty dang good. What's good about it is, as you can see here, it'll kind of eat up those bullets as it goes. So all the weapons most of the weapons are pretty good for the most part. And as you get further and further into routing and playing, knowing what to use and where is absolutely critical. So another thing I want to talk about with the weapon system is that it can be used for scoring as well, and I'll explain how this works. So when you get your weapon, like right here I have got the flame wall, whenever you can see there's a lot of weapon changing items, right? Well, if you match it to the weapon you currently hold, you'll get a 1,000 point bonus. Like I did right there. Perfect timing, me. Yes, and so I can see sort of how the scoring system can work is knowing how to sort of route and chain these together, because there is a sort of timing element to it, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of like collecting medals in Garega. Another aspect of the scoring system is simply killing everything quickly and effectively, and you'll get bonuses in certain sections. Right up here, you'll see I'll get a perfect bonus for killing all the stuff in this section. So now I'm over to the laser. For scoring, I think the laser is also very useful because it takes things out really quick. Right up here, you'll see me get the perfect bonus. So let me explain how these little red power-up things work, because those were a source of confusion for me for a long time. So when you see those little red things falling, actually when I first played it, I thought they were enemy bullets and I dodged them. And then I realized, oh, they're actually a power-up. So they have two uses. The first and most important use is they charge your shield. Shields are a very, very useful aspect of this game, again, especially since you don't have bombs. So you can see this sort of green stuff in front of me on my enemy, or on my sprite. That's the shield. And you just get one at a time. You can't like stock them up. And then when you get hit, you can see your shield goes away. You want to have your shield on as much as possible. And so the way you recharge your shield, you can see under the character profile picture there, you can see that G field. Until activation, it says 3 of 20. So I need to collect 17 more to get another shield, which isn't undoable. But it takes some time. It's not a quick fix type of thing. And then when you look into the right, you see the power-up info. So I am at max level power, which means I'm also at max rank, I believe. I believe that's how the rank works, is it scales along with your power. The ranking in this game isn't all that aggressive, though. It doesn't feel like. It just feels like the enemies move a little bit faster and a little bit more aggressive, but it's not something like Garega where the rank gets crazy and wild. I think it's a little bit more like a toned down Psycho, how it works. But the thing about it is that what you need to worry about is the further you get in the game, having a high power shot level is absolutely critical. Because the last two stages, this is kind of like Musha actually. Musha works the same way. The last two stages, if you don't have high shot level, you're basically screwed. You're gradiused out because you just don't have enough firepower to get through a lot of the sections very easily. I'm sure it's possible, but it is a significant boost and challenge. And that's why the extends in this game aren't all that meaningful. They're meaningful, but not all that meaningful. Because, okay, let's say you die a bunch in the early stages, but you go into the last stage with one extend, a shield, and fully powered up. You're about as likely to clear that as if you went into the last stage with 4 extends, but low shot level and no shield. Like, having a shield and having a high shot level goes a very long way. And having extends, especially in the later stages, you can just chain die in certain sections, and a lot of my runs end with brutal chain deaths. This run went really, really well. Obviously, I got the clear, but overall, throughout the entire game, I ended up getting very, very good at routing a lot of these sections. Well, relatively to when I began, at least. So another part about the scoring that I want to point out real quick, because I just saw an example of it, is the power-up items. So, not to be confused with the weapon items, the power-up items are the items that say P on them. And when you pick them up, they're very nice because they raise your shot level, which is very important in this game. But a thing about them is, if you are at max power, or at the max power at your relative red orb collection level, because you also need to collect red orbs to get to a certain level of power, then you get a 5,000 point bonus, which is quite a bit in this game, for picking up power-up items. So this game has all kinds of sort of soft ways, indirect ways of rewarding you for not dying. But there is no maximum bonus or any direct sort of scoring rewards for not dying. That was a miracle I made it through that section without getting hit. Or did I? Do I have one more part of it? No, I made it through that section without getting hit. I usually get hit on that section, so I'm playing real well. So watch, when I get this power-up item, I'm going to get 5,000 points. Also, you get invulnerability on the power-up items. So in the later sections, it's actually useful to kind of leave them on screen and then collect them strategically in order to abuse the invulnerability. You'll also do that a lot with the red orbs and with your weapon items too. So that's, again, another factor that kind of helps for the lack of bullets. The only difficult part about this mid-boss right here is just seeing the bullets. Like that I always had the hardest time with this one for some reason, because the explosion animations kind of cloak the bullets a little bit. So you don't see me do it in this run because there's no need to, but it is also possible in that first phase there to blow all the turrets except one, and then milk red orbs for more power-ups. The reason you'd want to milk red orbs is either to regain your shield or to bring your shot level up. Neither are necessary for me now because I have a shield and my shot level is maxed out. So we're about to come up on one of the most creative and interesting sections of the game that once you get the hang of it, it's actually really fun, but when you first play it, I think you're going to be pretty frustrated by. Oh no, sorry, I always confuse that. That's in the next stage. So let's talk about this boss fight. I was doing all kinds of shenanigans yesterday on stream to try and find a really cheeky way to take out this boss. Then I found this strategy that's very effective and very simple. So what you do is you just stay on the side of that sort of middle area there, you see? And then with the bubbles, you just let them hit you. So the way the bubbles work is that one of them really slows you down. I can't remember what the other one does. But what you want to do is you just want to tap dodge very aggressively but carefully rather than holding the stick. Because the way this game gets you is when you're in between those patterns and you're like slowing down, you'll hold this stick, right? And then your bubble will wear off and you'll just fly into the bullets. That's how it gets you. So the way to go around that is to do some really quick, aggressive tap dodging. Like this. Oh, I pissed the game off. Yeah, like that. And that'll get you through safely. So here we go into stage 5. This is where the game starts to get really, really tough, in my opinion. Or really nasty. You see me just sort of taking out these spiders. The ray gun is really good in this section. The rising laser. I wish they would have just labeled it laser, so I don't say rocket every time I see it. But anyway. So this opening section here, this is this point of the game now where I basically had to route out what power-ups I was going to be using at all times. So this section here, I'm going to be using the laser. Ooh, snuck around that. We want to be holding onto a shield now because this next section coming up can be real tricky. So right now, I'm looking to get a homing power-up, but I got bad luck and couldn't get one. So now we're just going to try and play as carefully as we can until we can get a homing power-up. So here's another opportunity. No flame. A really important skill of this game that I want to point out is memorizing the changing order of the power-ups because they are fixed in how they change. And that's actually incredibly important, especially when you start trying to route out the scoring for matching up the power-ups to the one you have. That way you can kind of, it's like Garega a little bit. It's like catching medals in Garega. You know, knowing the item drop order. It's kind of like that. So let me explain this section here, because right now looking at it visually, you probably don't notice anything weird about it, but it's actually a very strange section. So I got the homing, now we're in business here. So this is probably one of the hardest sections of the game when you first play it, because it's so strange and unique. So if you hold right and you hold left, you don't fully go where you want to go. Instead, you see how that tower rotates? It's kind of cool. It rotates the direction you move. Or opposite, I can't remember which. But you are sort of maxed out to the boundaries within this tower thing. So you can't go to the edges of the screen. You can only move within the sort of area of this tower. But there's also this gravity effect on you that pulls you back to the center. So if you try and hold right, as soon as you let go, instead of holding still like normally, it'll pull you back left. So there's like this slingshot gravity effect on you. And it can be very disconcerting and tricky to navigate when you first start playing this section. Once you get the hang of it though, it really comes in handy. A lot of the time, for instance, if you want to make the dodge, you hold right, and then instead of pulling left, you just let go and let yourself sort of drift into position. Another thing is just staying moving up and down rather than trying to move left and right is also the good way to go. And with these spawning rockets, there's a very particular thing you want to do where you want to stay up top of the screen as much as you can. And then you have to be careful because not only do they threaten you when they're alive, but when they die, like you see that, they will fall on top of you and damage you. That actually does damage you if they fall on top of you. And there's some really nasty sneak attacks with those rockets coming in. So this boss, this is kind of like a classic pattern. The hardest part about it though is again that these orbs are sort of you're being pulled by the gravity. I feel like if you really push left or right a long time, I think it makes the enemies more prone to fly around and be aggressive. I'm not sure if that's 100% confirmed, but it really felt that way when I was playing. Here we go into one of the harder boss fights of the game. Can't remember if I make... Not this guy. This is the kind of opening section of it. The boss is after this, but I can't remember how well I did against him. Some boss fights you don't really want to use the homing, but the chain chaser, but on this one it's a good choice. And on the next one it's probably the best choice, so it just depends on the fight. Overall, it is still a very useful boss fight weapon for the most part. And not really on the final boss though, because it gets confused. So he steals your power up, so now I can't use my power up. This pattern is one of the hardest in the game. It looks simple, but it's got these really weird drifts on it, and it feels a little bit random too. So you can get walled in by those, and I really struggled to find a consistent way to dodge them because his movement feels a little bit random, so it'll change from run to run. It feels that way. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it felt that way after doing tons of runs. Those guys, I don't believe the actual things themselves will damage you, only the lasers, but I just dodge those just in case because I get paranoid that they'll hurt me. So there we go, made it through that part. So there's a safe spot right here on the left most of the time, but that time there wasn't, which I'm not sure how that happened, but it is what it is. So here we go into stage 6. Stage 6, knowing what power-ups to use in this stage this is the make or breaks. Well, 6 and 7, but this one is basically the first big wall of the run of, okay, now you're getting a little bit nervous. Now it's like, okay, we got to pull this together here. I've found that I think the homing weapon here is probably the best. The rocket and homing are both very good for this section, for this stage for the most part. So right here you know those cannons. The way I do it is the ones on the bottom, I just move up above them and then try and target the ones up ahead. If you try and weave in and out of them, you can get yourself in some real trouble. So I think just skipping ahead, letting your homing sort of take care of the ones behind you, and then focusing on the ones in front of you is the way to go. Once you kind of route that out, it's not that hard of a section, but trust me, when you first play it and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get real confused and things are going to be flying at you and you're going to get in trouble. Those guys aren't too bad. I'm still using homing. Normally I would switch to laser right here, but I guess I felt more comfortable with homing. This section very, very similar. Notice that you kind of want to stay in between those cannons on the left, but you also want to take them out from below if possible, like so. Once you start doing that, this section becomes much more manageable and easy to get through. There's just some, with these later stages, it just does come down to routing. This boss fight is actually really fun, this mid-boss. So this is when you can really feel the M2-ness coming through, where they're just adding a lot of really cool sections, and that goes way above and beyond what you'd normally run into on like a Game Gear shmup. I'm really excited for them to, hopefully they continue making future releases, but they, amp it up, amp up the graphic presentation. I think the graphics in this game are fantastic and the sprite work is absolutely fantastic, but the Game Gear is only capable of so much, so I'd love to see them release a game that has a little bit more, hardware backing it in the future. That's my hope. This gives me a lot of hope because I think the game design and level design of this release is absolutely fantastic. Lost my shield, so now it's really, really, really important I regain my shield. Like, critically important, because the run killer is coming up here. So, at this point, I'm at max power. That was a mistake. I remember swearing and slapping my arcade stick when I picked up the defense shield. We do not want the defense shield right here. We want the homing. Luckily, I was able to recover without too much drama. Got the homing. Now it's all about... Now this starts to feel a little bit bullet hell now, where you're sort of leading them and cutting back, and this feels like a racing game right here. Maybe, you know, Sorcerer Striker or something like that. Or a Battle Grega a little bit. Bat Rider or something like that. So the way you do this section 2 is you be mindful of the screen scroll, because you notice the screen isn't just scrolling up and down, it's also scrolling left to right. So you kind of want to move along with the scroll at a nice pace rather than trying to fight against it. And here we go. This is the run killer coming up. And I think I get a Christmas miracle from this upcoming section. So the idea is... At first, it seems pretty simple. Oh, there's these turrets on the right. Then there's those bombs. They have lingering hitboxes, which always trips me up. But this is the thing that gets you. This sort of whip that comes out. I lost my shield. But that's okay. Because what I'm going to do is... This is a strat I came up with here. I'm going to milk this guy as much as I can to try and regain my shield as much as possible. Because the section after this is extremely challenging. Luckily, I'm at max power. So if you die too many times to this thing, and you're at like power level 5 or 4, you basically can kiss your run goodbye, because you're just not going to have enough firepower to get through the next section, and most likely, and you're going to chain die. And then that's going to make your power level go even lower and lower. And then when you're going into stage 7 with like 2 level power up, it's basically done. So this section is absolutely critical not to die on. And also to try your best to milk it a bit is get as much shield. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow you to milk it forever, because I would have just kept milking it until I got a shield. So I just need 2 more to get my shield, if you look at the meter there. I can't remember if I make it through. I abused that power-up for the invulnerability. Remember, I talked about doing that. You can abuse the power-up items themselves for some invul. That's like the classic example right there. So I just need 2 more to activate shield and not die. Here's the issue. A lot of the bosses give you shield items, or, you know, the red power-up items. This boss doesn't. This boss is like, nah. Oh, whoops. Sorry. I accidentally hit fast forward there. It doesn't move that quickly. I accidentally hit fast forward. I think I'm still fast forwarding it. Excuse me. Sorry. If I could read the Japanese. Okay, there we go. We're moving at normal speed. It just moves so quickly, it's hard to tell. Yeah, this part sucks because it's very random what he'll do. And the best you can do is sort of position yourself in a way that when he does his attack, you're going to be prepared to move out of the way. Sometimes, though, you can psych yourself out and move into him, and that is the worst feeling. So the thing about that boss fight is it's really not all that challenging at lower power-up level. And I think that's kind of the idea. But it's significantly harder at the higher power-up level, the higher rank. So this is the section where you just need to have high power. Otherwise, you're going to really get clobbered, because these subways, these evil subways or whatever they are, these evil ship things, they will continue to fire at you for a very long time, and they'll start to stack on top of each other. So if you're not taking them out quick and taking them out early, you're going to get really, really punished. So what's funny is the upcoming choice that ended up being really useful was a complete accident. I'll show you where. This right here. I go for the C, or I accidentally run into the D. I'm like, crap. Is this it? Then I realized, oh, this is like the one section of the game where this power-up is actually useful. There you go. Made it through. That section you can get through without the defense shield, but it's much more challenging. So that was kind of a funny mistake that ended up really benefiting me a lot. And now you want to get off it now though, because you're gonna get whipped in this section with the defense shield. The homing, I think the homing or the ray gun are the ways to go. Homing, I went homing though because you can play a little bit more scared with homing and still succeed. Where you have to play a bit more aggressive with the ray gun. So you can see I'm just trying to give these guys as much space as possible. I always hate enemies like that sort of scroll up from the bottom and then sort of just take their sweet time shooting you with these very relaxed bullets. This is a very challenging section here. I think the flame is actually the best weapon to use here, but I decided to hang on to the homing here just because my power up level was so strong that I thought I could really put a lot of suppressive fire out there. But the thing about the flame that's really good in this section is that it actually devours the bullets a lot of the time. So it feels a little bit more safe to use than the homing, where you're just relying on your pure on dodging. But I'm playing very, very well here so far. And I was very excited and also nervous because I usually come into this section in most of my other runs with like 1 extend and power up level 4. Like, I rarely ever come into it with a shield, full power up level, and a pile of extends. But don't get it twisted. I could still lose this run very easily. It could still happen just because once you take too much damage and you die too many times, it just stacks on top of itself, and the chain deaths are very real in this game. And you hardly get any invul on respawn either, so that's not even useful to abuse. So as you can see the flames here, I'm happy boy I got the flames. See how they just devour those bullets that are coming in from the sides? Very useful. Pick up the ray gun. And the thing about that death I was really mad about is that I didn't think it would fire. I thought I had sealed it, or I thought it was too low on the screen. So when it fired, I was like, really, M2? Really? You guys aren't going to let me seal this bullet? This section here is very strange, and you're going to see something very strange happen to me, and I'll explain what happened. So I decided to play as scared. I am playing incredibly scared right now, because I don't want to lose this again. I'm so sick of losing it in the stage. I've just been grinding this for 6 hours, you know, over the past day and a half or whatever, however long I've owned it. And a lot of my runs, I'm doing really well till I get to this stage, and then I get absolutely obliterated. So, like, every death is incredibly punishing at this point, especially in the sections coming up here. But, I mean, I'm hanging up. So you see, I'm no longer at max level. I'm at shot level 7, but that's still very good. So we're still doing okay there. Shot level 7. Here comes this boss. Something very strange is going to happen right here. Oh, I'm just sitting. I just sit there and die. Why did I do that? Well, it's because my controller, I'm not kidding you, my controller disconnected. My arcade stick, it disconnected for like 3 seconds, randomly. And it even had the little notification on PS4, it's like, controller disconnected. I was like, what? This has literally never happened. And this is gonna happen at the most critical time in this run. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to like throw my PS4 on the ground and stomp on it. I was so pissed, but I was like, okay, it'll be okay. Let's hold it together here. We can still make this work, you know. I still have power up level 6. That's still pretty good. But this pattern got a lot more challenging than it needed to because of pure hardware malfunction. And you know what? You can say it's my arcade stick. I don't think it was my arcade stick. I think it was the PS4 itself. Got a little bit like the USB port or something like that, because this never happens with my arcade stick. In all my hundreds of hours of playing it, it never just randomly disconnects. I think the ports on my PS4 are going bad. I really do. I think that's what it is. Anyway, you know, they're not all that well made. So anyway, so here we go into this section here. I'm actually really good at this section. So once I made it through there, I was like, okay, let's try and get a shield. How many we got? We got 16 more. I don't know if a shield's on the table. I do have a good amount of extends. But remember, every death is very punishing because you lose that shot level. We're at level 6. That's pretty good. So the good thing is that I save stated and heavily practiced this boss. the day before, so I was like, okay, we got this. Let's just tap it in, you know, like Happy Gilmore, just tap it in. So this section here, bullet hell section. I'm a bullet hell player, no problem. Every time this game throws bullet hell sections at me, which there's just a few of them, I'm always like, oh yeah, I got this. This section here, I suffer a really BS death in my opinion. Just the nature of the ray gun, I'm afraid sometimes, where my ray just did not come out right there. I was like, really? So what you do here is you move and you kind of catch them on the way down. There you go. The ray gun can be a little bit finicky here at times, especially since I wasn't fully powered up, but you know, whatever. Okay, power level 5, we can still make this happen because I know a neat little trick on this section. So if you just stay on the right side and just stay there, you'll be completely safe. So the way it works is it spawns these sort of eye tracer things on them. If you stay to the right of them, you'll be fine. But sometimes you can't kill it in time, and the eye tracer will kind of go along and shoot a laser. But if you just go all the way right, it won't ever hit you. So there's kind of like a abusable safe spot on the just right side of the screen. Here's the Battle Grega Vulcan attack. Prep for that. That actually isn't the scariest part. I'll tell you the hardest part of this pattern. I think it does hit me, which is coming up right here. This one right here. That always gets me because you don't quite know where it's gonna shoot. But I had plenty of resources and he was basically dead. Got the clear, popped off. I actually made the clear look pretty casual because I had a good amount of resources left and everything. But at the same time, my other runs, I was just getting obliterated in those earlier sections. And like I said, there's certain points where you take the death and you're just going to get avalanched on. I'd made it through those sections. I almost lost this run to a stupid controller or USB port malfunction, but luckily I was able to pull it together. I was real mad about that, and I was also afraid that maybe it would like DQ my run or something like that. Like I don't know how, if M2 would be like, oh, what are you doing unplugging your controller? I don't know what their rules would be if like your controller, because it basically what happened is it disconnected and then reconnected like 3 seconds later. But you could see there my ship just sitting there like a sitting duck, and I'm like hammering on all the buttons. You can't see that because the input display wasn't reading anything at the time, but yeah, that was really obnoxious. But I was able to recover. Pull yourself together. I may need to replace my PS4 or make sure to use the other port or something like that. Anyway, this ending sequence here is really cool, and thanks so much for watching this. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you made it this far, I think you should subscribe, notify yourself, all that good stuff, because clearly you enjoyed the video. And let me end by thanking my generous patrons. So thank you to Adrian Reyes, Dingo, Andy Cap, Anthony A, Ben Wynn, Borgi22, Corio, Disco Star Slayer, Dominic NG, Eric H, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Hausu, Kiwi, JLab, JB RPG, Joe Angelo, Game Boy Guru, K, Malaise, Mark Toms, Martin Worrell, Maz, Meher Calendrian, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Okla Kugels, Philip Mason, Ram Q, Raul, Sketchy Raccoon, Smacky Factor, TRM, Sugumo, Plasmo, and Utsukaya. Thanks for watching, everyone.